Can you hear?
Hello, and yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Hello.
Fantastic. Sorry I'm a little late.
That's okay.
Just got off doing a lot of Zoom calls. I was like, I gotta get out of here.
Mhm. Don't worry about it. I appreciate your time, by the way.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Happy to be here. So we can do lots of different things. I'm always curious to hear people's stories. So if you want to tell me a little bit about where you're coming from, I'd love to hear that and what's passionate and alive for you. I'm also happy to answer any questions about my system or whatever be most valuable for you given our time together.
That is like a background of me. I see that there is an imminent political change that should take place in Latin America, and I think it's very important for the United States. And it seems like we are in a very important ideological moment for everybody, right?
I'm very much in agreement with that.
Mm.
Yes, and no, I think that I think our political system is broken. I think I just have my cards on the table in terms of it. I hate Trump because basically at the character level, my passion and value is intellectual integrity and the dignity and well-being. That's sort of, and obviously he does not, value that at all from where I'm coming from. I'm trying to sidestep the political polarization because I see both sides as essentially pretty corrupt. They're anchored into an old mode of being that, did its job for a while, but we definitely need an upgrade in sensibility and communication and attitude and all of that. And so I kind of, I see my role given what I sort of have constructed theoretically, what I can assess where we are, what I can assess what our potential be, is to, offer some vision for how we might be different and more mentally healthy with more meaningfulness, a better way of relating to each other, to the planet, to the digital world that is exploding before us, and how to stay sane, happy, and healthy in all of this chaos. So that's my, which I don't think we're doing very good job of.
Yeah, we can do much better for sure. I think
so. That's my place in the current. But I will certainly be voting for Biden because I'm just scared about what Trump represents at multiple levels.
Well, Latin American people really have a lot of hope in the fact that Trump will get rid of like the dictatorships in Cuba and Venezuela, which they are really like a substantial attractor for negative things in the USA in general,
Yeah.
And they really impact a lot of people in the hundreds of millions of in the scales of hundreds of millions of people,
Yeah.
And I don't think Biden would do anything about that. But I'm more interested in what can be done independent of the partition context, partisan.
Yep.
Partisan.
Exactly.
And trying to I think that the game B is a very nice platform from where to think.
That's exactly, yeah.
Middle ground for Cuba to transition to, because pure capitalism we won't be able to implement efficiently and humanly, which is more important.
Right.
Because the mentality of the people back there is really struggling, even with the most simple problems, at the social level. And there are many differences, but it will be very difficult to transition people from 40 and older into a new set of rules.
Oh, totally. No, my vision is there are a couple of seers that are seeing stuff. We have to yoke them together, consolidate the vision, and get clear about what the language conceptual mapping is. See if we get resonance, clear enough resonance that can then start distributing a clear message. Then we can bring, a sophisticated, I don't know, I'm being stereotypical here, but it's basically get the seeing men together, yoke that, and then get a message that can get to the women. The women can then bring that into the world and then bring that to the children, and then the children be socialized. So the development, basically, in my estimation, is sort of along those lines. It's sort of like, okay, the society, if the society's a Titanic, the iceberg's out here, the people in charge of the Titanic are not going, you don't change that. But so it's a, decades long process, but hopefully the iceberg is 20 years out or whatever, and we can change it enough so that we scrape it as opposed to hitting it head on or turning into it in the short term. So that's basically a meta. So game A Titanic into some sort of game B sustainable system. Get the seers thinking about that. Get them harmonized. Then get the women excited and involved about that, and then start, because they do the basically, as my daughter says, sort of like men are spear throwers, women yarn spinners. Get the big game, get it back, clarify it, and then spin the network together, and then get that kind of leverage at the social level, and then start the socialization process of the developmental young, and then boom, that's the long-term vision that I'm operating off of.
Yeah, but I would be very interested in trying to itemize the things that as a nation, as a social medium, we can use, or we should potentiate, and the things that we should like leave behind. And I'm not really sure what is the structure, where those things fall into in the from the science point of view. How do you gather all the features as a society that we have from the cultural point of view, from the social, scientific, educational, and put all that together and and reconforming in an efficient way, because we have a lot of very particular features that seem to be useful to integrate into whatever we do in the future.
Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great question. It's a big question. So you have to go fairly abstract. So many people will have different, places and views and emphases and all that. If they can be somewhat coordinated to give some outline, and then you have to let the whole system emerge because you're doing this whole transition, there will never be a top-down recipe for it. But that said, hear some of the things that I certainly, here's my angle on some of this. Okay? So my angle on some is embedded in the knowledge systems that we have. All right. So I'm dealing with really 4 different things in my own thread. Okay. One is, it started with psychotherapy. All right. So psychotherapy is useful because it's basically, psychotherapy gives you the technologies for what feeds the human soul, and then how does it get knocked out. Okay. In relation.
And how do you distribute that to everybody?
Right. Well, that becomes right. So I'm seriously debating whether to give up my license this year. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, in part simply because I am more and more committed. I'm concerned that the old institutions don't work, and that includes my institution. And I also want to symbolically note that, really we're getting more and more professionalized. And in some ways that's good for certain things, but it's disastrous for other things. The idea that what we do in the therapy room needs to be professionalized and cloistered off and all of this other stuff, that's wrong. The vast majority of what we do in the therapy room at a basic principle and process level should be how we are structuring our family relations, our school relations, and all this other stuff. So there's a huge amount of basic knowledge about socio-emotional process, about listening, about connecting, about enabling, all of that. We don't do a good job of teaching it. We are socializing people. A lot of what was socialized before happens in the oral indigenous ways of being, people talking to each other. But now, since so much is digital and online and the fractured nature, we don't have that nearly as much. So we actually need to take the psychotherapy, get it out of the clinic room into the logic of being across a wide variety of different domains. And you see like all John Vervaeke's stuff and psychotechnologies and all of that stuff that need to be distributed as part of the game B space. And I completely agree with that. In fact, a lot of my system, like the little black dot behind me on the tree, that's called COMMO. That's an integrated approach to psychological mindfulness that says we should cultivate curiosity, acceptance, loving compassion, motivated toward value states of being. That should be a basic, something equivalent to that should be basically part of the standard socio-emotional relating process.
Do you think Cuba is going to transition inevitably into a constitutional process? And I'm 99.7% sure that it's going to be a new constitution, because what is being proposed, and please let me know when you're if you're running out of time. I don't know.
I have till 1:45, so I got another 20 minutes.
Great, thank you for your time.
Sure.
It seems that there is going to be a new constitution, because what is being proposed as an alternative is to instaurate the constitution from 1940. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think it makes any sense, and so I'm more focused in the possibility of us as a society, as a nation, having to face the special condition of having to create a set of laws that will define the country and the society for a long time, hopefully for a long time, and how defined and how flexible those laws need to be. We had Jose Marti. I don't know if you read I sent you the link, and I think
I didn't get a chance to read it. I'm sorry about that.
What I'm trying to bring back is he proposed the idea that dignity should be the first law of the republic, right? The respect to dignity, no, the reverence of dignity, of the dignity that each human being has inherently. So
that's directly consistent with my system. That's exactly what the garden. The first value of the garden is dignity.
Yeah, it's being able to appreciate the garden.
And then fostering dignity of individual. You have to which basically is a tautology, meaning we're going to valuing people, and each person has value. And we have a sense as to what they are when they're valued versus not. And then we want to cultivate well-being. And then we want to do all that with integrity. So you'll see on my signature line, be that which enhances dignity and well-being with integrity. These are the macro metacultural principles of values that I believe are, for me at least, and everywhere I see, these are the most abstract, but most also then central frames to build the kind of necessary society. So I'm 100% in board of that.
So I'm very interested in how we can embed that. It's almost like a generative function of everything else in society, because it's like a protocol that human activity spreads using that morphology, that topography. It's like you're pre-configuring the topology of the networks and the relation that they have between themselves, and they grow on that base after that.
Totally.
It's how I see it. So my interest is in how can we, in our language, in our Spanish language, which is a very important factor to consider, because it's not the same to design, at least to me, to design that in English and to express that in English, and bring down that enough to a level of everybody being able to learn it and to understand it and to embed it into culture and to permeate culture with that as fast as possible as a nation. And linguistics is very important for me at this moment, because it's going to define the nation, and the process that we are going to get through as Cuban people. I'm very interested in trying to gather some wisdom for that, in the practical sense.
Right. Well, I mean, I hear that. I mean, so from where I am, I'm a theorist. Okay, so basically, I did a deep dive. I cared about the practice, all right, and really, so in some ways, I'm sort of like a therapist and a physicist in terms of my mentality. So I want to help people on the one hand and relate to them positively and create empathy and create cultivation of well-being. And indeed, the right side of the tree is about practical reason and fostering that element. And then the left side of the tree is about pure reason. What are the descriptive and theoretical elements that allow us to explain the world that we're in and our human condition? So I did then a deep dive into, our knowledge structure. I got into it through psychotherapy. Then I fell into psychology as a science. I mean, I've always been a psychologist, but then I went back and then I realized that tunneled me into what science was. And then it tunneled me into what modern philosophy is about. And then I came out of that with a synthetic vision that it could tie together psychotherapy, psychology, science, and philosophy. So that's the unified theory. And then what it says is, oh my gosh, if you look at that, you see the modern mindset is deeply broken and fragmented because we don't have the right frame to understand our humanity. Okay. So one example, I just blogged on this not too long ago, because I was listening to Daniel Schmachtenberger. I don't know if you know Daniel Schmachtenberger, but
yeah.
Like in a space. And he does great incentive analyses about influence and power. Okay. And I really have a huge amount of respect and admiration. From the unified theory, though, one of the things I learned is I knew people would be motivated for social influence, but actually there's a very, very complex, tight relation between the desire for social influence, which is power, the capacity to move people around, and the felt sense of relational value, being known and valued. Okay.
Impact on the environment and the feedback of that impact, probably, right? The complete cycle, being able to influence reality and getting the right feedback that you are expecting from it.
That's right. And then there's the instrumental control. So that's the first question. Can I move you the way I want to move you? Okay. And can I move this cup the way I want to move it? All right. So do I have my investment capacity to affect change in the material world, and then my investment capacity to affect change in the social world, move people around? As a resource, how much I can do that is my social influence. Okay. It's crucial, and we're motivated to track how much influence we have, what's the effect of our influence, what do people do? But that's all framed in the instrumentality of it all. There is also, in the context of instrumentality, meaning can I move you, and what's my sense of that?
By instrumentality, you mean which methods do I use to achieve my action?
Right. It's just in terms of can I do it? Okay. So it's a sort of doing. All right. But now if we think about people that have influenced you, okay, you'll notice a very distinct difference when you're being controlled and manipulated, right? As opposed to when you are responding because from your own intrinsic motivation of carrying the person. Like my son just had a appendix inflammation and then had surgery. Okay. It's because I love my son. I stopped what the hell I was doing, got up there, called doctors, get everybody involved, as my wife did also. And we worked very hard to help and save him, in relation because
did he come out okay?
He came out okay. Yeah. Thankfully, it was a very good example of good modern medicine. Did a good job with him, and still a little sore, but a lot different than that appendix bursting and God only knows what could happen. Okay. So anyway, that's a good, but the reason is I did all that was because I value him. Okay. Because he has relational value, meaning that I, as an important other, I know and value him. So the argument for the unified theory is that, yes, we care about social influence, but tied to that at our heart levels, we want to be known and valued for who we are by important others. Okay. Which is similar to social influence in the sense that to the extent I am valued, people will work on my behalf. Okay. But it's very different in the sense that if you're a manipulative, instrumental person, like an asshole boss that tells people what to do, you'll have influence, but you will not have value. Okay. Relational value. In fact, you could have the reverse. They hate you. Okay. What capital laborism tends to do is it tends to simply think in terms of influence. Like, how do we get people to behave the way we need from instrumental ends, ultimately bottom line capital resources. Okay. But then that turns everybody into social influence as the key variable. What game B should be doing, all right, what game B should be doing is realizing that what our task is not to create a society that creates competition around social influence and rewards power, although it'll inevitably do that. The fact of the matter is that actually we have everyone but psychopaths, and usually they have to be injured as they develop as adults. So if we protect them, very few will have not have this desire. Virtually everyone wants to be known and valued. Okay, and so what we actually need to do, I argue, from a society relation, is develop a social capital frame, where capital, the social capital is the experience of the mutually felt experience of being known and valued, or to have the felt sense of dignity between people. Dignity is another word for esteem and being valued. So the structure should not be thinking about, oh my God, how do we get gross national product around capital? It's how do we actually mutually enhance the felt sense of relational value? That's the task. And then the influence matrix tells you you're going to have competitive, cooperative, and freedom dynamics in terms of dominance and anyway, power, love, and freedom dynamics that then go into that. And then, the bottom line is that it frames the proper relation, and it shows how modernity, with its emphasis on efficiency and instrumentality and bottom line investment dynamics, it is excessively instrumental and then alienating. So if we actually do emphasize instrumental power value stuff, people will feel increasingly vulnerable to not feeling known and valued. Right now, we need to get virtually all of our known and valued from our friends and from our family. Okay, our work system is not well set up for that generally, and the entire social power structure is devoid of that as a focus. And so we need the proper game B structure would have that through and through to be one of the key values, would tie right back into the core value of dignity and weave that around. So that's an example of how the sort of the theoretical structure allows for fine-grained analysis of various elements, and then the kind of tweaking about what it is that we ought to value. Because if you don't get the tweak right, if you focus on social influence, you'll actually turn everybody into instrumental. And I think that's part of the reason we're lonely and alienated and bitter.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I believe that we are not suffering in Cuba, for example. Despite everything in Cuba, people are really interconnected still,
That's great.
And so you can easily rupture the social fabric that has been created by scarcity if you eliminate scarcity all of a sudden.
Great.
And create new mechanisms for people to relate themselves in a way that is more efficient for them from the economical point of view, but is eroding the social structure that they that they have and they don't really value, because more or less that is the idea, trying to conserve what needs to be conserved. And develop new skills as a society.
Great. Were there any particular questions that you had that you wanted me to feedback on?
I had a lot of things that I wanted to know. I had a question about how, in your framework of theory of knowledge, how do you see like religion? Because I was looking for like some kind of justification system that religion is a justification system for you, right? Every set of values is a justification system.
Completely.
Okay.
Yep. So science is government. If it's a language-based network of beliefs and values that is language-based, that then legitimizes is and ought. The proper term for that in the language in the unified in theory of knowledge is that's your system of justification. So then that would speak to ultimate religion is a justification system that speak to ethics, morality, ultimate concerns, and ultimate versions, ontological claims about the way, supernatural God, things like that. I absolutely believe that modernity, another problem of modernity is that it didn't create a good framing for the religious worldview relative to a scientific worldview. And now with a postmodern worldview, we've got a lot of worldview confusion. I absolutely believe we need a religion that's not an explicit return to the dual worldviews of traditional religion, in the sense that we're not going to be able to mesh scientific knowledge with an explicit literal dualistic worldview. Obviously, if there's faith in that pure metaphysical version of reality, but there is a lot better that we can do in recognizing that science is a particular kind of language game. It plays by a set of rules. It gives us lots of good knowledge, but it's not everything. It's logos, We need, for a society also needs what's called mythos. Mythos is the mythic narrative that ultimately frames our ultimate concerns, that tells us much more about what ought to be. It also is the case that we need to anchor ourselves in our own perfect perspective, our pathic experience of being. That's not scientific either. We need pathos, mythos, and logos. So the whole reason that I called it originally the tree of knowledge, and then was called into building the more theory of knowledge that's a tree in a garden, is to make sure that we see the mythic connection, that the story, I mean, I'm married into a Jewish household, the Christian Catholic tradition, obviously in terms of South America and, you know, the Cuban, all of that's unbelievably central. It's built into our structure. I think Jordan Peterson, I have some criticisms of him. I think he's an interesting guy. One of the best things he did was the Bible series. He shows that the Bible series, that those stories and that frame of reference is really, really key. And so I am trying to offer a scientific humanistic vision that is naturalistic in one sense, opens the door towards supernaturalism, but also embraces the mythic elements of our religious traditions in a way that's a lot more harmonized with our scientific knowledge than has been the case in modernity. So that's part of the vision of the whole.
Very interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, I structure my own knowledge. I came out with the system. I imagine a lot of people do, where if you're interested in physics in any form, you would probably always have like a beginning of everything in the beginning of the universe, and then try to position knowledge in that timeline, right? That's what I did. So when I saw the structure, I was really interested, because it seems so natural.
No, and it is, it's amazing, but nobody is really, although many people have, of course, had the whole evolution of complexity at some level, but no one has hit the fact that actually to map complexity, you need to think about the levels inside the dimensions. So you need to go from particles into atoms into chemistry, and then there are fundamental qualitative jumps as a function of information processing and communication, which creates a different complex adaptive landscape. And that's why we get life mediated by cells and genes. We get mind mediated by nervous system and animal-animal communication. We get culture-person mediated by language. And then you get all these radically different behavior patterns of persons, of animals, of organisms, and of objects. And, you know, kind of my miracle is, I can't believe nobody got that quite right. And what that also does is it solves my discipline's problem of subject matter. Ultimately, it's like my psychology doesn't know what its subject matter is. That's a really interesting thing. It shows you how confused we are about things like mind and matter and what science is. And this map, as far as I'm concerned, gets all the pieces, puzzles in the right place, and then allows you to actually say, this is what the science of psychology is. This is how you separate subjectivity, objectivity, clarify what scientific knowledge is, clarify what animals relative to persons are, and everything else sort of falls in line. And that'd be great if that's the case. At least if you believe knowledge is a good thing, and then that would solve a hell of a lot of problems. And then maybe we can use that to build societies where our needs are our psychological, social needs are much more getting effectively met, and we feel more connected and fulfilled.
Yeah, I want to try to use the few little minutes that we have left to ask you a little bit about James Madison, because I have a couple of medium pieces that I have and that I wrote, in which I try to deploy. I send them to you. I know you're very busy, but it's basically like a strategic deployment of a vision that tries to use a fractal growth pattern to develop in Cuba like a technological province that can provide. Sorry for that.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
No worries.
Just a second here. In the transition of Cuba to democracy, I want to try to. They're gonna be struggling for power and for the definition of a constitution and everything, and the whole process for at least a year, 2 years.
Okay.
But the Cuban population needs a sudden increase in economic access, in economic power.
Right.
Something must be created right at the beginning of the change, when the communists leave power, to create a quick return industry. The idea is to use space industry and space manufacturing as a very specific kind of hardware that can be done in Cuba, because we have a lot of welders and people who can easily transition to that activity. So my idea is to try to use a place, an economic development area that has been already created 20 minutes from Havana, and try to create like a legal space, special legal space that is apart from the political power that is going to take place in those 2 years, where the whole Latin American space community and clean energy community, an innovation hub and manufacturing hub in Cuba. The US needs to move manufacturing from China anyways, and we are restructuring everything else. So, and the idea would be trying to create an economic, I have this quite well structured, this plan quite well structured, and I have a couple of documents that support the whole idea from a social and economical and national security point of view, and from a cultural point of view, because space can be, like I said in the document, an scaffold to develop the whole continent, because the US have left the continent in the back, you know. The potentiality is amazing potentiality is not being used and explode, and it's being used by all these dictators and narco terrorists and people that are destroying the human fabric in the continent. I have 4 minutes, so
I mean, it's not a super.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna be going over this quite a lot of times, and if you have another chance, and if you can connect me with somebody else that you think might help me a little bit in trying to structure everything, that would be amazing. So what I was going to get at is the fact that one of the documents, which is called America, is the name of the whole continent, because I'm proposing that Americans should think of themselves as part of a project that can be much more bigger than themselves, and the country itself needs that, because there is no space for entrepreneurship anymore. Competition is so. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I could. So I will hook you up with this guy Manuel. I don't know too many people at James Madison that would be. I'll keep my eye out for them, but no one immediately comes to mind that would be in that kind of space. We have some people that have some connections in Kenya, some people in Costa Rica. I don't know if anybody has any connections, and I don't know of anything that would be, sort of readily linked into what you're talking about. But one person does come to mind, Manuel Menega. He is. I'll introduce the two of you. He's got a frame for evolutionary leadership. He's on my theory of knowledge listserv, and I don't know him super well, but I met him on Zoom a couple of different times. He's got a brilliant vision, a big broad vision. Seems like he's got a lot of connections even in South America. He's now in the United States and been here for a while. So he may know some people in various universities that would be able to talk with you about what this vision would have. So that would be one connection that comes to mind.
So now the idea was to mention that because it seems after I learned about you and I searched for James Madison and knew a little bit about who he was, that he seemed to have the same concept that America needs to give like a leadership role in the continent. So it was interesting that we agreed on that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, JMU wants to create certain kinds of initiatives along those lines. Absolutely. The question is, I'm kind of out. I'm
working on your own complicated.
I'm working on my own thing. I like JMU, and I actually have a bit of a complicated relation a little bit there. But my system is where my passion is, and so it's really about sort of like that is where all my attention goes. And then if there are connections to it, that's great. But that's my calling. So that's just the epicenter of everything that I do. So I'm only very loosely related. So like I said, I know some international things that are going on at JMU. But probably the best thing I could do would be to hook you up with Manuel, given that, at least as far as that particular concern goes. If you get yourself into sort of what are sort of genuine sort of potential theoretical things, like I said about the whole relational value, I could justify why dignity is really central. If the Constitution starts merging, you have connections there. Certainly you can send people to me about what the unified theory you know, I mean, I really believe that there is going to be, it's early now to have any real clout, you know, and so the pressures that you're under in terms of time, I mean, I'm 20 years out, you know, in terms of, you know, I'm sort of like, you know, this has got to, hopefully the world will hold together, and then has to be a long developmental process. It's a very abstract thing that then needs to be concretized and translated into a language. And it's not ready for, you know, impact delivery at this juncture. But, you know, I certainly could see how it might be down the line, very deeply influential, but that's just where it is developmentally.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for your time.
So, hey, I really appreciate your, you know, sensitivity, and we'll just stay in touch, okay? And I will send you a note to introduce you to Manuel.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.